Hey, good morning and welcome to the beginning of Tanya, the beginning of chapter 1, that is, because we learned the introduction before. And today is Friday, the 22nd day of Kislev. Let's begin with tzedakah. Kedayla tzedakah, shemakareves sasagula. Make sure you do it at home as well. So, we begin the chapter 1 now in Tanya, and as I mentioned in the title page, the Alter Rebbe wrote, the book is called Likutei Amarim. He called it Sefer Shel Beinanim. Likutei Amarim is a compilation of sayings. The Alter Rebbe, in his humility, just said that he compiled sayings from sages and books. He didn't even put his name in the book, but he called it Sefer Shel Beinanim, the book of the intermediate. And we'll talk about it. What does it mean, the book of the intermediate? Generally, there are two types of people. You have people who are in the level of a tzaddik. A tzaddik is a person that transformed completely the evil inclination. And a tzaddik lives, he doesn't have anymore the challenges that a person, a normal person has. And then there is the other people, the rest of us. The rest of us wake up with challenges every single day. And a Beinani, the intermediate person, as we will explain in length in this book, in the Tanya, is a person who has the challenges, but is completely controlling every single day. He controls his actions, his speech, and his thoughts fully. He's living a life just like a holy man. If you put the two people in the same room and you watch them for 50 years, the tzaddik and the beinani, you're not going to know the difference. Both of them serve Hashem. Both of them don't commit any sins at all. And in this book, the Alter Rebbe guides us. He calls it Sefer Shel Beinanim because he wants to guide us how every person can reach that level of living the life like a Beinani, like an intermediate. That a person that has the evil inclination, but he always controls his thoughts, his speech, and his actions. And of course, along the way, we know that every person, the different people in different levels, you have beginners, you have people that are more advanced. But the Alter Rebbe gives us the guidance, even in the small battles that we have, even if a person that is still a beginner. So he gives us the guidance how to overcome and how to identify what comes from the good side, what comes from the not good side. And this is what he calls it, Sefer Shel Beinanim, the book of the Beinani, because it gives us the guidance how to reach to the level, the ideal place where a Jew should be. And we call it the book of Tanya, simply because it's based on the first word that the book begins with. The book begins with the word Tanya. Tanya is not what some people think. Tanya is a word in Aramaic, and it means we have learned. It means Tanya, a Jew must constantly learn. So he quotes from the Talmud, Tanya, we have learned in the end of chapter, the third chapter of the tractate Nida, as we'll shortly begin. But there's also meaning in the word Tanya. The word Tanya has also the name of eight, the letters. The Tanya has the same letters, Aleph, Yud, Taf, Nun, as the word Eitan. Eitan means the strength, which talks about the strength of the soul. There's the inner strength of the soul that each and every one receives even before conception, as we'll shortly see. Every single one of us is given the powers, the inner powers to overcome any challenges and to be able to fulfill our destiny on earth. And in this book, as we mentioned in the introduction, the Alter Rebbe said that this book is replacing the need of yechidus, private audience with the Alter Rebbe. Because when you study this book, whenever, wherever, you study this book of Tanya, you are entering in a private audience with the Alter Rebbe, and you're able to receive the strength, the inner strength, to be able to know what to do in your mission in life. And as the Alter Rebbe said in the introduction, that if some people are not capable of understanding and finding the answers by themselves, they should approach the mentors in the city, join a class, find guidance. They should guide you how to find the answers in the book of Tanya. So let us begin the very beginning of the Tanya. So, as we said, that in this book, the Alter Rebbe is going to teach us how to reach the level of the Beinani, the intermediate. But in order to do that, we first need the Alter Rebbe goes first to clarify what is the term Beinani, where is it coming from? There is the tzaddik, the righteous, there is the wicked, the rasha, and there is the Beinani. So this is what Alter Rebbe begins right in the beginning of the very first chapter. Says the Alter Rebbe, Tanya b'soif peri gimel danida. We have learned in Nida, end of chapter 3, Mashbin oisoi, an oath is administered to him. Who is him? Every Jew. Before a Jew is born, the neshama is being administered on earth. What is the oath? An oath. What is the oath that is being administered? Is tehi tzaddik ve'al ti rasha. Be righteous and be not wicked. And even if the whole world judging you by your actions tells you that you are righteous, regard yourself as wicked. So what he's saying is that every person receives this oath is being administered, the soul is being administered the oath, saying two things. Number one, you should be righteous and not to be wicked. Number two is how you should view yourself, how you should regard yourself. So he says, even if the whole world tells you, you are a tzaddik, judging you based on your actions, your behavior, you're righteous. Don't let this fool you, and you should consider yourself, you should regard yourself as a rasha. So number one, who is being administered? What is the idea of, what is the point of being administered an oath? We know we have the nefesh, the godly soul, the animal soul, as we'll see later on in Tanya. So obviously we're talking about the godly soul before it goes down. But why does the godly soul need to be administered an oath? Doesn't the godly soul want to be a tzaddik anyway? And here's the answer is the word mashbi'im, which means administered an oath, has also the meaning as masbi'im, which means to be satiated, meaning that the soul is being satiated, meaning it's being given the power, the soul is being given the strength, the power to be able to fulfill the destiny. That means that when you go down to this world, and with all the challenges of the world, because the soul, the godly soul, is being clothed in a physical body with all the challenges. Therefore, the soul is being administered the oath, meaning it's being satiated with the ability to be able to tap into the superpowers of the soul and to be able to fulfill and overcome all difficulties and do the right thing. So now the Alter Rebbe is going to analyze this, to explain this statement, because really the second part of the oath doesn't make sense. That it says that you should regard yourself as a rasha. Even if the whole world tells you you're a tzaddik, you should regard yourself as a rasha, as a wicked. So the Alter Rebbe says, number one, this seems to be a contradiction to what it says in the Mishnah in Avot. Over there it says one should not regard himself as a rasha. This calls for explanation. For we have learned in the Mishnah, Avot chapter 2, be not wicked in your own estimation. So this seems to be a total, flat-out contradiction to what we just said. In addition to that, says the Alter Rebbe, even logically it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense that a person should consider himself wicked. Why? Because it says simply, if one is going to regard himself wicked, it's going to get depressed. I'm wicked. I'm worthless. What's the point of trying? And what's the problem? Then he's not going to be able to serve Hashem properly. To serve Hashem properly means to serve God with happiness, with joy. That's what Alter Rebbe has of furthermore, if a person considers himself wicked, he will be grieved at heart and depressed. And consequently, will not be able to serve God joyfully with a content heart. So the statement that it says that a person, the neshama, before he's born, is told, consider yourself wicked, seems to go against logic. How could you consider yourself wicked? You're going to be depressed. You're going to feel bad about it. So the Alter Rebbe says, wait a second, maybe there's a solution. Maybe you should consider yourself wicked and don't feel bad about it. Just go on with your life. So the Rebbe says this is a bigger problem. If you consider yourself wicked and you don't take it to heart, what's going to happen? You're going to become careless about anything godly, anything, you become so total irreverent to God. So he says, while if his heart will not be at all grieved by this self-appraisal, he may be led to irreverence, God forbid. With such an attitude would sin perturbing him and not at all. That if sin doesn't bother you, the criminals or the mafia, the first kill is most difficult. Later on, it becomes easier to kill people. The first sin is hard, but if you become careless, it's going to only do bad. The person is not going to be caring about committing sins. So, in order to explain this, the Alter Rebbe is going to first determine what is the definition? We need to define what is a tzaddik, what is a rasha, and what is a beinoni. The answer to these questions will be later on in the chapters, but the Alter Rebbe, in this chapter, in this book of Tanya, the Alter Rebbe gives the whole explanation in a very structured manner, explaining what is a tzaddik, what is a rasha, what is a beinoni, then on explaining what our purpose in this world and how what is the way we function and so on. Says the Alter Rebbe, however, the above matter will be more clearly understood after a preliminary discussion of the true meaning of righteous and wicked. Says the Alter Rebbe, we find in the Gemara five distinct types. A righteous man who prospers, tzaddik v'tovlo. Literally means tzaddik that is good to him. Tzaddik v'ralo, a righteous man who suffers. Rasha v'tovlo, there's a wicked man who prospers. Rasha v'rale, and there's a wicked man who suffers. Ubeinoni, and then there is the beinoni, the intermediate person. And the Gemara explains, the Pirsha b'Gemara, tzaddik v'tovlo, tzaddik gamo. The Gemara says that what is a righteous man who prospers, this is, it talks about a complete tzaddik gamo. Because he's a complete tzaddik, that's why he prospers. And tzaddik v'ralo, tzaddik she'ene gamo. And the righteous man who suffers is the imperfect tzaddik, the incomplete tzaddik. Then the Rebbe brings another statement from the Zohar. In the Zohar part called Raya Me'emne Parshas Mishpatim Pirish, Tzadik V'raloi, Sha'rasha Boi Kofof L'toiv. The Raya Me'emne Parshas Mishpatim, in the Zohar, it is explained that the righteous man who suffers is one whose evil nature is subservient to his good nature. What does it mean? So in other words, the Zohar explains that the term tzaddik, veralo, a tzaddik, a righteous man that has bad to him, it is defining what type of tzaddik he is. It is the ra is lo. The evil, that means he has a subtle evil there still exists, but it's completely subservient to the good side of him. Gemara says there's the brachas. Then in the Gemara, the end of chapter 9 of brachas, it says as follows: Tzadikim yitzatoiv shoftan, chulu rashaim yitzer harashoftan. It says that the righteous one are judged by their good nature. What does it mean they're judged? They're motivated, they're ruled. Later on, Tanya explains what the meaning of why does he use the word judged, like a judge? While the wicked people, they are judged, they're motivated and ruled by the evil nature. The intermediate men, they are judged by both, the good side and the evil side. Now, the Gemara brings a statement that one of the greatest sages of his generation, the sage named Rabbah, this is Rabbi Bar Nachmani, and he said, when he taught his students about what is a tzaddik, what is a rasha, what is a beinoni, so he said, Omar Rabbi kegoina no beinoni. Rabbi declared, I, for example, am a beinoni. He said to his students, you want to see a beinoni? I'm a beinoni. Now, mind you, Rabbah was the greatest sage in his generation, and he considers himself a beinoni. Omale Abaye, so Abaye said to him, Abaye was one of his students. He said to him, Loi shavik mar chaya l'chol berye. He said, Master, you you make it impossible for any creature to live. Why? So one of the explanations is because it says that the world, in order to exist, must have a tzaddik. So if you are a Beinani, an intermediate, that means that there is no tzaddik in this world. So there's no one able to live. So the question is, how would the Rabbi say about himself that he's a Beinani? So when I was teaching this Tanya once, someone was asking, maybe Rabbi, he was a humble person. He didn't want to say that he's a tzaddik. But the obvious sense is that this is not called humility. This is false humility. This is humility. A humble person doesn't mean that he lies to himself or to others. If he knows that he's not doing anything wrong, he knows that he's doing mitzvahs, constantly praying, and he's at a high level, how could he wouldn't say he's a Beinani. He wouldn't lie to say that he's not. So by saying that he is a Beinani, that means the fact that Rabbi was able to mistakenly say, to think that he's a Beinani, that itself proves to you that a Beinani is a very, very high level, as we shall see soon. Loving to understand all the aforesaid clearly, an explanation is called for. Another thing says the Alter Rebbe, and also to understand the statement of Iyov in Baba Basra, chapter 1, it's in the Talmud tractate Baba Basra. It says over there as follows. Iyov said to God, Ribono shel olam, b'rasa tzadikim b'rasa rashaim. Lord of the universe, you have created righteous men, you have created wicked men. And the question Alter Rebbe is going to ask, what kind of statement is this? Does God create righteous and wicked? This, to be righteous or to be wicked, is something that is given to the people. Free choice. God gives us free choice to choose to be wicked or to be righteous. And in fact, it says before the child is born, there's an angel that calls out what this child is going to grow up as. Is he going to be rich? Is he going to be poor? Is he going to be wise? Is he going to be foolish? But one thing it doesn't say, whether this child is going to be righteous or wicked, because that is up to the child. That is up to the person. So that's the question. What does it mean when Iyov said to Hashem, you have created righteous and you have created wicked? For he does not decree which person ought to be righteous and wicked. In addition to that, says the Alter Rebbe, we need to understand what exactly is a Beinani. What is the intermediate person? At what point can a person be termed Beinani? We must also understand the essential nature, the mahus, of the rank of Beinani. He is certainly not one whose deeds are half virtuous and half sinful. That is certainly not a Beinani. Why not? So the Alter Rebbe is going to bring up a number of points why we cannot say that a Beinani is half and half good deeds and half sins. Number one, he says, as we just said before, if that is the case, then how would Rabbi make a mistake thinking that he's a Beinani? For if this was so, how could Rabbi err in classifying himself as a Beinani? And you know who Rabbi was? You know what kind of sage he was? It says, Alter Rebbe brings that, it says that even the angel of death could not control him. because he never stopped studying Torah. A person who studies Torah in the level of the tzaddik, it is also about King David, the same thing. They could not control him as long as he was studying Torah. So then Malach HaMavet, the angel of death, could not control him. When it is known that his mouth never ceased studying the Torah, so much so that even the angel of death had no dominion over him. So certainly, how then could he err in considering that half his deeds were sinful, God forbid? So if Rabbi Bar Nachmani, Rabbi said about himself that he is a Beinani, obviously a Beinani is not a person who has half sins. And the Alter Rebbe goes on to question this very question: at what point is a person considered a Beinani? Says the Alter Rebbe, furthermore, when can a person be considered a Beinani? For at the time one sins, until he repents, he's deemed completely wicked. Even if a person does one sin, that sin makes the person as a wicked person until he repents, because that sin goes against God. So if he did one sin, he's already wicked. He's not a Beinani. And if he did commit a sin and then he repented, as soon as he repents, he's not a Beinani, he's already a tzaddik. And if he was sinful and then repented, thus ceasing to be wicked, he's deemed a complete righteous. So when is he a Beinani? So, says the Alter Rebbe, maybe you'll say that if a person committed violated only a rabbinical violation, says the Alter Rebbe, no. That also makes the person, terms the person wicked. Even he who violates a minor prohibition of the rabbis is termed wicked, as is stated in Yevamos chapter 2 and in Nida chapter 1. Moreover, it says, even he who himself does not sin, but has the opportunity to forewarn another against sinning and fails to do so, is termed wicked in the tractate Shavuos chapter 6. All the more so, he who neglects any positive law which he is able to fulfill. If a person is able to fulfill a positive law and doesn't fulfill it, he's not a Beinani, he's worse. For example, for instance, whoever is able to study Torah and does not do so, to whom our sages have applied the verse, because he has despised the word of the Lord, the Torah, that soul shall be utterly cut off. It's a very harsh words about a person who fails to do a positive mitzvah or like studying Torah. It is thus plain that such a person is called wicked more so than he who violates a prohibition of the sages. So therefore, this being so, we must conclude that the Beinani is not guilty even of the sin of neglecting the Torah study, the study of Torah, which is one of the most difficult things to do, is to make sure not to neglect Torah study every single day is very, very difficult, very, very hard. A Beinani does not neglect Torah any day, even a single day. This is why Rabbi mistook himself for a Beinani, because he knew he's studying Torah constantly. He knew he's doing the mitzvahs, but he didn't know that this is because he really transformed the evil. He thought that he put the evil to sleep, but maybe somewhere down there inside there is a little evil there. That's why Rabbi mistook himself for a Beinani. And here the Rebbe comes and says in the footnote, it says, "Ma'ashe kosu b'zoya chele gimel, daf reish lamed aleph, kol shememuotim avenes v'chulu." As for what is written in the Zohar, in part 3, page 231, he whose sins are few is classified as a righteous man who suffers. So it seems like even in the Zohar suggests that a person who has some sins is considered a tzaddik veraloi, that has a little bit of sin. And here we say that even a Beinani doesn't have any sin. Says the Alter Rebbe, "Hi she'elas Rav Amnuna le'Eliyahu." This is not a statement of the Zohar. It is a query that Rav Amnuna asked Eliyahu. But according to Eliyahu's answer in the Zohar, the meaning of the righteous man who suffers is as stated in Ra'ei Mehemne of Parshas Mishpatim, quoted above, that we just learned, meaning that the righteous man who suffers is one whose evil nature is subservient to his good nature. And if you would ask, how could Rav Amnuna have this thought about this tzaddik veraloi, that a person has sins? So he says, "V'shivim ponim laTorah," and the Torah has 70 facets, modes of interpretations. So Rav Amnuna would think that this perhaps is one of the modes of the interpretations of the Torah, but clearly, Alter Rebbe says, and he put everything very, very clear, that a Beinani is one who has no sin whatsoever, not even the sin of violating the Bittul Torah. Not a single moment in his day is taken, is used not for a good cause. That is a Beinani. And therefore, we need to understand, and the Alter Rebbe is going to explain, what is the tzaddik, what is the Beinani, what is the Rasha, and he will continue tomorrow, Bezrat Hashem, in the Shir, explaining that the Beinani, like King David, the tzaddik, is a person who completely eliminated his Yetzer Hara. The lesson we take from today's last Tanya Shir is that we should know that we are all satiated. Every neshama is satiated. Mashbin oisai. Hashem gives us the ability to be able to fulfill our mission, our destiny in this earth. So this is the end of today's shir. Thank you for joining me. Hashem. We shall continue on Sunday. Have a wonderful Shabbos.